Hey, beautiful souls, welcome back to my mind space. I'm Tenny, and thank you so much for being here with me today. So, today we're stepping into a conversation I feel is a natural unfolding from last week's episode on forgiveness. Forgiveness clears the space, but boundaries builds the architectural structure that protects what's inside the space. So today we're exploring boundaries through three different lenses: self-respect, intuition, and deep introspection. Because boundaries aren't just rules, they are your self-practice. They're the way of you honoring your truth. Let's dive in gently. When we talk about boundaries, we're really talking about self-respect. And self-respect isn't loud. It's not dramatic. It's not about proving anything to anyone. Self-respect is that quiet consistency. It's the way you show up for yourself when no one is watching. And boundaries are the physical, emotional, and energetical expression of that self-respect. Think about it. Forgiveness without boundaries becomes self-betrayal. Your no is not rejection, your no is alignment. And your body knows this before your mind does. So your body is always speaking, and boundaries are how you respond to it. I must admit, there was a time in my life when I didn't understand what boundaries really meant. I thought boundaries were just walls we subconsciously build to protect ourselves in different ways from being hurt. But I've come to understand something different and embody something different. Boundaries are not walls, they are architecture. The structures that hold who we are, our energy, our time, our truth. And without structure, even the most beautiful spaces collapses. The thing is though, the world around us labels us as difficult when we have boundaries. The world around us has taught us that saying no means you're being unkind and choosing yourself is being selfish. But boundaries are not about control. They're about self-respect. They're that quiet decision to honor what your body already knows. They are that internal agreement not to abandon yourself again or your truth. And the core of boundaries are not aggressive. They don't require explanation. They don't need justification. They don't need validation. They simply need to be felt and honored. Look at it this way. Your intuition is the architect. Your boundaries are the blueprint. Intuition whispers the truth long before you can rationalize it. It shows us as discomfort, as when you hesitate to respond to something or do something, or that sudden no you feel inward before logic kicks in, or that quiet feeling of this doesn't feel right. This is because intuition speaks through energies, true sensation in our body before words can form. Thing is, our intuition shows up in different ways. Whether we understand it or not, it doesn't really matter, it's still there. It shows up in ways where we feel ourselves shrinking, but we can understand why. We feel our soul dimming and we have that feeling that our peace is being disturbed, but we can articulate it into words. All that is your intuition, that is your inner wisdom, gently saying a boundary is needed here. And that's the blueprint for you to build that structure to literally protect your essence. A structure out of self-respect, to keep your energy flow from leaking out. That's boundary. And it doesn't need validation. It doesn't need to be understood by anyone. It only needs to be honored by you. Those feelings we have sometimes, like the tightness in your chest, or suddenly feeling exhausted from interacting with certain people or in certain spaces, that inner pull we feel to step back or to create space from situations around us, those are not weaknesses, they are messages, and boundaries begin the moment you stop overriding those signals. And when you stop overriding those signals, the work begins to in you building that structure to protect your essence. And that comes by listening instead of rationalizing things. That comes by trusting that discomfort. That comes from trusting that feeling as an information, not something to push through. The interesting thing, though, is the most difficult boundaries are the ones we set for ourselves. Those structures we need to build from our patterns, the structure we need to build internally, those structures we need to build from all the whole versions of ourselves. Those are internal boundaries. This is retrospective work, the path that requires honesty. Interesting enough though, boundaries are not just about others. They're about you. They're about choosing you consistently, compassionately, and courageously. The truth is, there's a difference between protecting yourself and respecting yourself. Protection comes from fear, but respect comes from clarity. Our boundaries, our protection shouldn't be built on fear, but clarity. When boundaries are rooted in fear, they're rigid. But when they're rooted in self-respect, they're spacious. This means you don't harden yourself to be safe. You don't disappear to be at peace. And healthy boundaries are formed. Healthy boundaries don't shrink you. It doesn't shrink your world, but it supports it. Healthy boundaries allow you to show up fully without bleeding yourself or your energy dry. Let's think about it this way. Forgiveness changes the emotional landscape in which our intuition becomes the embodied architect for our boundaries and the embodied blueprint to define the new terms with clarity for the structure to protect our essence. Forgiveness is the release, the clearing of the new grounds landscape. The boundaries are the structure, the element formed to protect what's within that space, which is you, your essence, your truth, who you are. Forgiveness is letting go of the weight, those things that doesn't belong in our world anymore, clearing the space. And boundaries are making sure you don't pick them up again. The truth is though, boundaries are improving by what you say. They're revealed by what you tolerate by your actions. You don't need to convince anyone to respect you. You don't need to convince anyone to respect what you've already decided within you. And the truth is, boundaries are not punishment. They're permission to rest, to soften into you, to choose alignment over approval. Remember, boundaries are sacred architecture of self, quietly holding you together, balanced and intact as you keep growing and evolving. The more you honor them, the less you need to defend them. Remember, your boundaries are not walls. They are the structure with doors and windows. Doors you decide who enters and how they enter and what energy is allowed to stay within your space. or who not to enter. May your boundaries be gentle, clear, and deeply rooted in truth. And may you always feel safe inside yourself. Thank you for sitting with me in this space today, and thank you for choosing yourself again. Until next time, honor yourself, trust yourself, choose yourself.